ultimately, this is we're looking at the evaluation of recording methods for user test sessions on multiple devices. And why is this important? Well, we've been talking about research a lot today, and one of the main core cornerstones of research is being able to accurately observe and just get data. So if we can record and stream what we're seeing from users, all the better to get that in the hands of developers. So let's talk about kind of the evolving needs and what has happened. When I first started the video game industry, we were all console focused. Mobile games was Snake and Tetris and all that great stuff. But what we saw is, whereas when we were working on console, we were really focused on what the users were doing in the software, whether they were jumping, whether they were able to make that next platform. Everyone was using the same controller. Hopefully, we can get them down to make sure that controller is effective. So, what has happened in the past few years? We've made a huge jump to mobile. Probably all of us has some sort of gaming mobile device, guilty pleasure. I know I have many. And this is something that we've seen industry-wide. So we've had to really adjust in terms of what we've focused on when moving over from console to mobile. And some of the things come up that are very important when we're testing on mobile devices. It's now we're thinking about, like, are users having a hard time hitting certain hitboxes? Are things overlapping? Are things too small? These are things that we would need to really observe on the part of the user. And if we just see the player playing Angry Birds, we're not really sure what they're doing if we're only looking at the screen. So we want to be able to see more. We want to be able to see if there are instances where maybe players' fingers or their hands are obscuring really important UI on the screen. And of course, also seeing in certain instances if you have to press a button or if you have to tap, or are they swiping instead or vice versa. So these are all challenges that we face when trying to develop and design and ultimately get the best usability feedback from our user mobile games. So ultimately, we're looking for what do we do? Well, at Disney Interactive, we've looked into some, like, hey, we have a few options available to us. And this was kind of like the launching point to identify which is the best one for moving forward and getting the best kind of data. So a few things are important here. One, it's crucial for the user to behave as naturally as possible. It doesn't help us out if they're playing a game in our lab and we're getting data and it's not natural. It's not how they would normally use the game, the mobile game. Maybe they're just using it on the table for some reason, but at home they would be lying back. We don't have labs where they can lay back in bed and play their games, but it's something that would be different. But it's also important that both the software and hardware interactions are observed. So the idea being that if someone is repeatedly failing a level in a game, if someone just has an HDMI output to a TV, the developers can see, okay, the user is not able to advance, there's issues going on here, but only by seeing their hands actually interact with the device, and you can actually see, okay, they're having difficulty swiping, or maybe they don't see this one UI prompt because their hand is covering it. So ultimately, the mobile gaming presents new challenges that were not addressed by current literature. There was a lot out there that really focused on apps or tasks of that nature, but we were really thinking, what are some of the unique challenges with capturing data for mobile games? And basically, our hypothesis was recording methods might negatively impact player behavior and performance. So that's what we wanted to move forward and getting. So the aim of the study that we ended up moving on to perform was evaluate the variety of the mobile recording devices and determine our own best solution for recording and streaming user tests. So I actually brought some examples up here of some of the mobile devices that solutions that we had tested. In the first case, this was this one you see right here. We actually don't have the middle one available, but you would put your phone underneath, and they would have to remain under the camera. So it's a webcam, and this is approximately 40 centimeters tall, and this is one possible solution. The other one was more handheld, so I'd actually put the device on this, and the webcam would be aimed down, and that second one was about 20 centimeters tall, and it weighs approximately 163 grams, and so that was another option available. And then the third one was a clear sled, which you see right here, and I believe that was about 18 centimeters tall, and it has multiple parts. So on its own, it weighs about 110 grams. With this attachment, it jumps up to 173. So these were the three devices that we were aiming to test, as well as, of course, the natural setting, which we would move forward with looking. So
when we were looking at how to best test this, we had to narrow down some games that we wanted to put through the paces. So the first thing we did was, of course, get our target demographic. At Disney Interactive, we test adults, children, all ages for a variety of games. And so we recruited 10 players, 8 to 12, 10 players, 18 to 35, and 10 players, 40 to 60. Now, none of them had prior experience with usability research, so this was the first time that they were encountering any of our solutions. And more importantly, we also chose Ridiculous Fishing, A Tale of Redemption, and Fruit Ninja for the reasons such where Ridiculous Fishing heavily relies on accelerometer. You are a fisherman and you have to move things side to side, and it's something that could potentially be impacted by having your device on it, something that would impact player behavior. And Fruit Ninja, as many of us may be aware, heavily relies on swiping and slashing. It's the whole point of that. So we were using the overhead camera, which you see here, the white sled, which is the in-between of these, and the clear sled, which is right here. And ultimately, we were looking to get the player scores. We recorded that throughout our study. We were looking to identify really the characteristics in terms of how kids react to things versus adults, and so on and so forth, and then questionnaire ratings. We had the users self-report as they went through our study. So ultimately, we threw them in the lab, and we had 4 stations set up for testing. So, and then 1 control, which was no recording device, to see how that operated. We did testing in groups of 5, and we assigned researchers to each participant and moved them in predetermined and counterbalanced order. And they played 5 trials of each game at each station. And now, we did ask them beforehand in the survey how experienced they were with the game. That could vary, but ultimately we gave them 2 sessions where we taught them the rules, and we let them just familiarize themselves with the games before beginning with the 5 trials. So we recorded the scores, and the players then completed the survey regarding their own perceived performance with the recording device after the trials were completed. And then, of course, during testing, we also, because it's important not only to see how the users perform, but whether, say, developers or people in the back room or the observation room or watching the stream are getting the kind of information that they would require when identifying usability issues on a mobile device. So we had 2 or 3 researchers in the observation room noting usability observation errors as we were going through. So this is the first of our results, the player self-report, which I think some of this is pretty obvious. We looked at the no recording device, and the various things we asked the users to comment on was whether they thought their performance was impacted by the device or lack thereof, or how their performance was in the game, the comfort levels while playing the game, their ability to focus on the game, and we asked the awareness question, how aware they were of the mobile recording solution for the 3 that we were testing, the overhead camera, the white sled, and the clear sled. So with our first one, we can see that I'm surprised that everyone wasn't 5. We tested on 1 to 5 Likert scale, and we definitely got everyone felt pretty good about not having anything on them or mobile solution interfering with their gameplay. So they felt that they were pretty good performance-wise, their comfort levels are great, and the focus, they were zeroed in. In terms of the overhead camera, we start seeing a sharp drop in some of these self-reporting so their performance dropped, their comfort levels dropped, and their focus seemed to drop as well at this stage. And all of a sudden, we're starting to get more awareness because as they're utilizing this, they were instructed with this format, hey, you need to keep your hands under the camera and try not to keep your head in the way. So now they're trying to have to keep some other things in mind while they're going through their mobile user game experience. And now we go to the white sled, which we can see that one actually rated pretty low in a lot of elements. We see them going to the negatives with both comfort and focus, but definitely awareness. Awareness skyrocketed once they felt that they had giant thing attached to their phone. And then we had the clear sled, which is this one right here, and you could see that the comfort, performance, and focus levels actually remain in the green, as it were, but the awareness is still there that they have something attached. So when we looked at the scores, we actually saw something very interesting that for Ridiculous Fishing, the only one that really presented a statistical difference when they were playing with the devices was the white sled. The white sled was consistently showed to have a negative impact on player scores. So if they sucked, they could always just blame it on that one. But we did notice that when using the different recording devices, there wasn't really an impact that was associated with the users of different ages, although we leave it open that different types of games would probably impact that differently. So you can see a picture of Ridiculous Fishing. It is very addictive. We all played that for quite a while after the fact. So, talking about what we have here is that we really realized that 2 of the 4 conditions really provided poor or no observation of the tests. So we're talking about the one where we just didn't have a camera attached and they were just freely playing without a device, as well as this overhead camera. What would happen is that the overhead camera did cause fewer changes to player behavior, but the moderator kept having to remind users, oh, hey, can you put the camera right, underneath again? Or, I'm sorry, could you take your head away? And so it really required a lot of interruptions throughout the test. And ultimately, that was something that really impacted the timing and pacing. Now, the white sled ultimately was at the bottom of every one of our measures. It was the only device that had statistically significant negative effect. And ultimately, what we saw was when this was shrunken down, which is the white sled, the weight of the camera and the form factor really caused it to have poor balance, and it didn't work with the form factor on the phone. Now, consider a game like Ridiculous Fishing, where you have to go like this really quickly to catch things and get a high score. Well, if it's attached to something that's very unbalanced, that's going to potentially impact player score. And we did see, of course, that all the methods of recording did have something of an impact on their score. So what ended up happening is that we're really discussing now what can we do without, what compromise do we have to make in order to get the best observations from the users for the developers and researchers, but also to not impact their gameplay quite so heavily. So ultimately our conclusion was, after getting all the data, is that the clear sled was the ideal candidate, kind of like the best of both worlds. We were able to get the best observational data, kind of came through, and we saw both the hands interact with the game as well as the content of the game. We did not see a statistical score change from using the white sled in terms of their performance, and ultimately this one is fairly well balanced. To talk really quickly about what this is made of, I mean, this is acrylic, folded, bent, shaved down, so it's a combination of a lighter, flatter camera, and then the way that the actual design, it's designed with both the removable piece and whether you want to play it in landscape or horizontal mode. So, in our American Idol of sleds and mobile recording devices, the clear sled was the winner.